Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Life in Comedy. I'm your host, Will Beckton. This is a show about comedy, and this episode is focused on improvisational comedy, aka improv. My guest today is Michael Delaney, who is definitely one of the premier improvisers to come out of the Upright Citizens Brigade Theatre in New York. He was also very active as a director, coach, and teacher. He has some amazing stories and insights, and I'm very glad we got a chance to talk. I am here with Michael Delaney. Legendary gets thrown around a lot, but I think it applies here. Amazing improviser, a person that I have a lot of warm memories of from my time at UCB in the early 2000s. Thank you for doing this. It was great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
How did you find out about UCB initially? You were already in New York?
I was already in New York. It was word of mouth. We were working at a theater that did the Herald and taught the Herald, and I didn't know of any other theaters that really talked about it or did it. And Truth in Comedy had come out, and I heard that those UCB guys were Del Close students.
Yeah.
And so we sort of pounced on them and got them to coach our team, and they were offering classes, so just jumped in.
Oh, that's great.
I had just gotten my second kidney. I'd been sick for a number of years, and I finally got well. I'd been waiting for these kidneys for the longest time.
Oh, wow.
And my buddy Beowulf gave me a kidney. I finally recovered. And the first show that I saw when I was well enough to go out about in the world was UCB's Bucket of Truth.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw them improvise, and I was completely sold.
Yeah. Isn't that how they would kind of develop some of the show, too? Wouldn't they kind of put stuff on its feet?
Later,
okay.
Season 1 and 2, they exhausted all of their sketches that they had done in their reviews because they had years of live shows.
Yeah.
You know, kind of as a backlog to jumpstart a lot of those episodes. By season 3, that well had completely run dry.
Yeah.
So they did have interns transcribing ASCATs as like a factory, like factory workers to call premises for.
Yeah.
And it worked. Lots of them. Pooh Stick came out. Oh, Pooh Stick came out of a much earlier ASCAT. Of course, ASCAT was utilized in that way many times, but not quite so organizedly until season 3.
There was some show called like Minty Grab Bag or something. There was some show that was sort of...
Hand of Adonis.
Yeah.
Hand of Adonis is one of those sexual terms, you know, like a dirty Sanchez or something. I don't remember what a Hand of Adonis is. I don't have a good head for those kind of those things. But the show was called Hand of Adonis with a Minty Grab Bag. I guess that was the swag bag that you got at the Hand of Adonis party festival, whatever it was.
Yeah.
That might have been their last one, the last live review. Once they were working on the TV show, they were so busy that their live shows got very rough and tumble.
Yeah.
They weren't like so well constructed when that was their kind of main product. Because the theater opened right at the same time UCB got their Comedy Central shows, around 99?
Yeah.
So Spaghetti Jesus and Hand of Adonis weren't quite as tight as some of their previous reviews.
Yeah, it's almost like a band. Their first album is comprised of like all the stuff they've been doing, and then all of a sudden they're just like, oh, Jesus. Like what
There
now?
is that.
So you're from Florida, right?
I'm originally from Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
I'm from Newton, Massachusetts. Well, first Lexington for 6 years, then Newton. And then when I was 12, moved to South Florida. So yeah, from 8th grade through college in Florida.
Wow.
Palm Beach County.
Age 12, moving from Massachusetts to Florida.
Yeah,
wow.
Major culture shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a C student in the making there. Or an A student, or you just go, all in on it.
Yeah.
No, I went the other way. I decided to start exploring psychedelics.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Did you have,
I was
forbidden.
Favorites? No, I was forbidden from doing LSD by my older brother and sister until I was at least 13 years old.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Then you're ready for it. Yeah.
I was at the time.
Yeah. I had some friends that like came to school on acid like in like 7th grade. Like in retrospect, I'm like, what the fuck? But at the time I was like, oh, that's silly or whatever. Like,
I thought doing Quaaludes during school made perfect sense and was a totally reasonable thing to do.
Yeah.
Or Valium. But acid? Come on.
I know. It seems like a waste of acid to me, but I think it was like a got it from the older brother.
Part of it is the fuck-offness of it all.
Yeah.
And the brazenness of it, getting away with it is part of it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
If you can keep the paranoia under
to be able
wraps.
to function, to be able to be on time to all your classes.
Yeah.
Is a kind of a testament to you if you can handle that while on cubes of acid.
Yeah. And were you and Billy Merritt friends in Florida, or?
We met each other at college at Palm Beach Community College, which is now Palm Beach State College.
Nice.
In the theater department, Billy says he wandered into the building because it was a big building. He thought there might be food there. And we were doing a play. We needed crew, so he was conscripted on the spot. He became our fly guy.
Oh, my God.
And so he was on the crew, and the cast loves partying with the crew.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was like the funniest guy around.
Oh, man.
And then we did The Mystery of Edwin Drood, which has an improv component where there's all these different possible endings.
Oh, okay. It's like Clue-ish. I mean, pardon for
yes,
the obvious.
Exactly. Clue-ish. And it's a design your own ending where the audience gets to vote and stuff.
Yeah.
Written by Rupert Holmes. So in the early rehearsals, there was a lot of improvisation. And Billy was just murdering. I mean, he was just, he was one of those guys who seems like he's just on fire, you know?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, shit, I can start a comedy group now.
Yeah.
I hadn't been really mentally prepared or trained at all up to that point. But now I had a few plays under my belt. I was getting used to the whole idea of being on stage.
Yeah.
For me, comedy and theater were two different worlds, different buckets. I was always obsessed with comedy since I was a little kid. And that was that. But then I got hooked a little bit doing plays in college.
Yeah, yeah.
And like say, that's when Billy came around. But then I started seeing Second City. The Second City Torco would come around, and you start seeing these other models. I'd always known about Second City, but it's like, oh, I'd have to go to Chicago or go to Toronto, and they're up there on this big main stage. But then when the Torco comes to your town, you know, it's more like, wow, you know, there's something people can do.
I wish I'd been aware of that. I had no idea that existed. I definitely had like a New York, LA, and just from sheer not knowing about it, I didn't even know Chicago was such an important city until I got to New York.
Well, none of us do until we do, you know. And,
totally.
If you're young enough, it is good to start practicing when you're young enough. I was just getting over that curve. I think I was probably in my early 20s when I started improvising.
Yeah, I think there's like a learning a language aspect to it. Is you want the synapses to be fresh. You know, you want to get some of that stuff in there early, even if you don't go whole hog. You want to like introduce.
It's also a naivete. You don't want to. Yeah, I think that's what you're talking about. You don't want to learn too much.
Yeah.
Because there's what did Orson Welles say? There's no authority like ignorance.
Yeah, that's great. So obviously, The Swarm is a very highly regarded and much loved group. One of the things on the show is I like just blatantly naming people on Herald teams just because I think it's an interesting exercise and sometimes just mind-blowing to hear all these names together, even if you're used to it. Dave Blumenfeld, Sean Conroy, Andy Daly, Billy Merritt, Katie Roberts, Andrew Secunda. Fucking insane group.
And Amy Poehler, we put ourselves together with Amy.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Before I thought better of it, I was going to ask you, how did The Swarm form? But I didn't want to say that sentence.
Billy and I were coming out of Lost Footage. We already had a team we were part of.
Okay.
And Andy Daly, Sean Conroy were already part of Chicago City Limits. But now this UCB thing was happening. It was all coming out of Solo Art Space on 17th Street at the time.
Yeah.
Most of it. They taught maybe a little scattered around a little bit, but Solo Arts was the main space where they did ASCAT, where the classes were taught chiefly.
Yeah.
And we did performances there too. We did a Matt Walsh class. We did a play. We did that performance there. I was the light man for UCB's stage shows that they did there. They did a couple. They did Big Dirty Hands, which is followed by their Saigon Suicide Squad.
Oh, nice.
Which is the show they took to Aspen.
Oh, wow.
Saigon Suicide Squad became an episode on their show also.
Yeah. That's why it rings a bell.
Where were we? Swarm?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing for me about The Swarm, and because there's, Respecto is incredible. As far as the teams I was saw a lot, obviously Mother was incredible. There was a lot of good teams. Pound was interesting because it was like a collection of great people, but it never really took off as a
These are generational teams.
Yes, exactly.
The first big team that came out of the whole UCB kind of thing was Swarm.
Yeah.
And these were all like timelines.
But these generations are tiny.
Definitely.
I mean, the increment
the generations
is really small.
are short at first. They get much more spread out as time goes on.
Yeah.
There were also a lot of first-gen guys that were in Respecto.
Yeah.
Hubel, Riggle.
Meaning people that were there during the Solo Arts period.
Yeah, those guys studied at Donna Fineglass and all that, and Danielle Schneider,
Jack
and Owen Burke was a big player.
Yeah.
Anyway, Swarm was the first to get her own weekend slot.
Yeah.
We got the Friday night slot, and we held that slot until we transformed into the Stepfathers, till we dissolved.
Oh, wow.
And then Billy and I, along with Chris Gethard, created Stepfathers.
Speaking of generational, yeah.
Yeah, well, that was me.
And Zach, too.
I thought that was going to be it. I thought when the Swarm ended, like Billy, that's it, the run's over. And he was like, oh, no, we're keeping this slot. We're keeping the Friday night slot. And I was like, I hadn't thought about that. Because once the Swarm got down to 3 people, we kind of became a Swarm and friends at that time,
Yeah.
Where Gethard would sit in, Zach Woods, different people. But then when Sean moved to L.A., Swarm was down to 2 players, so we thought it was time to close the show.
Yeah.
Which we did. And like I said, then we started Stepfathers.
Yeah. That's a fun group of people, like as far as like a combination.
It changed a lot.
Yeah.
It was almost like King Crimson. Stepfathers was like
trying to keep track of the lineups.
It was kind of my King Crimson. Yeah. That was the only constant in the Stepfathers.
Yeah.
Even though I left for a while because I was literally in a coma.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I took some time off.
I think it's a valid excuse.
The coma only lasted a couple days, but it's the recovery that's the bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One show that I wanted to make sure we talked about, and I heard you and Billy talk about it a little bit on your SCTV podcast, which I really enjoyed.
Thank you.
But Pile Driver, I really loved. When I just think of like a roll call show for that group of funny people, that show comes to mind because so many people were in it. There was great
all
mixture.
Hands on deck. The TV equivalent of Pile Driver would be the Love Boat because every celebrity comes through.
Yeah.
You just had to create a wrestler or a pair of wrestlers. You had to have a game.
Yeah.
Sean Conroy came in for a show once as, instead of the wrestler's manager, he was the assistant manager. I think they were Staples guys. And so Sean's on the sidelines, going, come on, guys. Yeah, Billy invented that wrestling form. It was copied by many. Cage Match kind of adopted that form.
Oh, interesting.
For years and years.
And everybody had like a pre-taped intro,
it was very sketch prov. It was probably what people consider Curb Your Enthusiasm type, where you knew what your beats were, you knew what your game was, but there was no script. Everything was, off the cuff.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it was, the wrestlers would all really prepare. Everybody would prepare their bit, and they had their moment in the sun where they would come out, execute their match, do their game.
Yeah.
It was a speech, you did your speech. It was a match, you did your match. Hubel and I didn't know what was going to happen.
As the announcers.
No, we didn't.
What were the names again? Dick Duffy and what was the...
Rob Hubel was Dick Duffy, and he was like the owner of the league, the kind of Vince McMahon type. I played Chet Soley, the grandson of Gordon Soley, who was the real announcer for the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, and CWF Championship Wrestling from Florida.
Oh,
and he had one of these voices, welcome, so long from the Sunshine State.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called Master of the Game,
oh, wow.
which I've never got my hands on, but because I was a devout wrestling fan as a young teen in Florida.
Oh, wow.
Then once Hulk Hogan and those guys came along, I couldn't bear it any longer.
Yeah, once it got past the sort of like junkyard dog period, it kind of lost me. Like under
it's
the
sort of
Giant.
When the jig was up as far as the willful suspension of disbelief.
Yeah,
and it had kind of become a bit too aware of itself.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the concept of willful suspension of disbelief, I think look no further than professional wrestling.
Yeah,
like they mastered it.
Yeah, you believed that those guys hated each other.
Yeah.
They were like any other comedy team.
Yeah. I was at a bar one time, and the bartender there had like long platinum blonde hair, really buff, and he was a really nice guy. And he was like, hey, like, I'm really excited. I got an audition tomorrow for WWE. I think it was WWE at this point. I was like, oh, cool. What's your character? And he's like, I'm a surfer, but I'm a villain. So I keep like a surfboard underneath the mat. And at a certain point, I sneak away and grab a surfboard and break.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, do you mind if I run a couple lines with you? Or something. Like, it was really cool to kind of see. It was the only time I had seen any part of that process. It was like, of course these guys audition, but I never like considered that process.
It was
before.
kind of improv theater before improv theaters.
Oh,
that
makes sense.
It was very local. The Midwest had their league. Chicago had its thing.
Yeah.
South Florida definitely had its thing. And these guys are sketch probbing it.
Yeah.
They work out roughly what the deal is.
Yeah, there's planned stuff and there's stuff that you just have to fucking figure it out.
I know, and you need that toughness. They absolutely have to have that the real toughness.
Yeah. And then the other show, and then this came up, I interviewed Seth Morris, which was great. I love one of my favorite people out of that theater.
Yep.
You directed some Naked Babies, right?
I did. I got to direct the Naked Babies because I don't remember. I was in and out helping a lot of shows, including Seth and the Naked Babies. And then they got a gig to open for Tenacious D. Because Tenacious D had always had bands open for them, and the bands always got booed off stage. They thought they'd try a comedy group.
Yeah.
So Naked Babies get hired to do a 30-minute set, so they get me to direct it. And we did kind of some new stuff and modified stuff from one of their shows. I think there might have been We Hate Me, but I'm not sure. No, it was Emotional Stuntmen.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was the main one, but we got it down to a nice
I think I remember like the picture or the poster for that.
Yeah,
I think
don't remember what
that.
all the emotional stunts was. I think the last one was that they had dosed Bowie with LSD right an hour before the show started. And so he was going to start getting off, and then they immediately put him on the phone with his dad. And so they're doing the outro while Bowie's like, Dad? And he's starting to get off. Things of that caliber. They had one, I think one of them involved Coke and Pop Rocks.
Oh, okay.
Because the Pop Rocks got on the stage, and then when Tenacious D was out, their feet were sticking to this. They were complaining during the show. Like, shit, fuck, I'm the director. That is my fault. Because KG's like, what's going on with this stage? The sticky.
But the thing he was talking about, I'm trying to remember how you came up, but Nailed Down.
That was an improvised Secunda show that me and Secunda did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw it. Did you guys just do that at marathons, or was that?
It was sort of a one-off that we would pull out either at marathon. I'm sure we did one or two just to do it.
Yeah.
It was a trick. It was a gimmick,
How was I'm trying to remember the sequence of events with the shoes.
We would just get someone to pretend to be a stagehand.
Yeah.
As if he was I think the first one to do it was Ben Jones.
Oh, nice.
And Ben just ate the scenery. I said, Ben, can you nail these shoes to the stage?
Made a meal out of it.
He really did. He made a Swanson meal of it. He's a hungry man. I'm like, Ben, can you be the guy, the stagehand who comes out and nails? I thought it would be easy for someone to nail shoes to the stage.
Yeah.
No. You have to be fucking Ben Jones to be able to nail.
Like pressure treated or something.
It's so hard. I had to drill any other nail down we did after that. I would drill a hole through the shoe.
That's so funny.
And also some of them had steel in there.
Oh,
well, these didn't, but somehow Ben, because he's a strong guy.
Yeah.
In Pile Driver, he would pick up Chad Carter and body slam him, but Chad wouldn't hit the ground.
Oh, wow.
He would just stop him.
Oh, my God.
With his strength.
I think I remember that.
It was Herculean.
Yeah. Wow.
He brings a flashlight with him. Right? So he's poking around looking for the right place. But then when he starts to actually try to pound it, it's a fucking effort.
Yeah.
So it takes him a long time. Finally, Secunda and I come out and we step in the shoot. Now, a lot of tension's been built right now, which I didn't plan on.
Yeah. You just thought it was going to be a quick nailing down of the shoes.
I used to teach this one thing at university, and those university kids were about tension. What about the tension? This tension, that. I'm like, oh my God, I've never heard the word tension so much in my life. Is it because I'd been in comedy theaters where no one talks about tension?
Yeah.
They talk about pattern game and heightening.
Yeah.
But those film people, man, everything's about drawing it out. Talk about making a meal of it. Oh, they make a meal of everything.
Yeah.
So, very simple premise is that the two characters aren't stuck to the stage, but the actors are. So you just have to justify why the actors don't move, which isn't that hard.
Yeah.
So it's just another excuse to be clever and do talking head scenes. And that's what it was about. It was supposed to be the ultimate talking head scene.
Yeah.
Because that was me and Secunda's big note was don't be so talky heady.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, maybe we should embrace the beast.
Oh, yeah.
And make a form of it.
Totally. Kind of like the driving scene. Like
there's other forms that do that. Bass Prov's one of them.
Bass Prov's great.
Where the two characters are always bound to a location.
Yeah. Is it always a fishing boat? Or
I think it is.
Yeah.
So they're,
Man, I saw Bass Prov blew my mind. I'm like, were those Chicago guys or like, man.
Bass Prov is Mark Sutton and Joe Bill.
Nice.
It's easier to achieve group mind with two-person shows.
Yes.
The larger the ensemble, the more sort of variables there are, and the harder it is to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
You got somebody, I did Omelet Vision with Billy Merritt all over, fallen into a two-man show with Billy Merritt. It's like riding a bicycle.
Yeah. It's kind of like Nichols and May, two people that are just fucking complete each other's sentences.
Thank you for comparing us to Nichols and May. But yeah, it is easier for Nichols and May to do Nichols and May than it is to do Nichols, May, and Severin, and Barbara, and whoever else.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really hard to get 7 people completely simpatico.
Yeah.
And that's what you would see in the early UCB days. Because groups like the Swarm, we were intent on being simpatico.
Yeah.
We were good Boy Scouts. We did what we were told in class.
Yeah.
Which was like to kind of take the high road a lot.
And that's a Del Close-ism, right? The always play to the height of your intelligence.
Definitely. And don't be repeating yourself. Don't be going with jokes. You know, there's a lot of jokes whipping through the comedian's mind. You got to forget about that stuff. Stay locked on what's important.
Yeah.
You know, there's only room for one joke in the scene. We call that the game.
Yeah.
All springs from that.
And everything else serves that.
Every oak starts with a seed.
Yeah. So did you ever cross paths with Del Close or like you did?
Yeah. I used to do sketch shows with 2 Andys. Used to write these really chunky sketch reviews.
Yeah. And that was Secunda and Daly?
Andrew Secunda and Andy Daly were the 2 Andys.
Yeah.
And they did a whole bunch of reviews. We did one that went to Aspen when the SCTV reunion was there.
Oh, nice.
And they would often bring them to LA to showcase them and such. We came, I think, in 97 for, I think it was the 2 Andys Gala Reunion Spectacular.
Okay.
Which was their first show. And I.O. was setting up shop in L.A. at the time, so Del and Sharner were here with like a group of Chicagoans who were meant
so when
to...
I.O. West got, like, was this...
when it was being established.
So Del was actually on the premises?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I didn't know that.
He did. He came to town to like teach a couple workshops and get people started. And so we asked Sharner if we could sit in. She knew we were UCB students, so she kindly said yes.
Yeah.
And
Had Truth and Comedy just come out, about to come out? Or...
They come out a couple years before that.
Oh, okay.
And so Del gave this introductory speech to this group of students who were to be basically their transplants to be the teachers and student body, I guess, or some of them anyway.
Yeah.
And I recorded that speech. I'm transcribing it now. Yeah, I just dug it up after many years.
Oh, my God.
And asked Jake Fogelnest to digitize it for me, which he did. And then Drew Nelson then used his AI programs to get it transcribed for me.
Oh, my
so now
God.
I'm going through now to clean up the transcript for my book.
That's incredible.
It's a wonderful speech. It's a speech that's given specifically to a group of people who are ready to move on from the training wheels Harold to the more groovy, or the Harold where it's more of a, quote, pleasing arrangement of scenes, games, and monologues in no particular order.
Okay.
As Del says, do the group game when it feels groovy to do it, not just because it's the third scene.
Almost like modal jazz. Like one of those things.
Exactly. So we did that workshop. It was nice. And, you know, that was when I was at a period where I felt like I'd been in training for a while. I trained at the National Improv Theatre for a few years. My group Lost Footage played on their own for a few years. UCB came to town. I retrained with them for a few years.
Yeah.
I'm getting to my Jesus year now. I'm 33.
Yeah.
How much fucking training does a guy need?
Yeah.
And so I had that workshop with Del.
Yeah.
Then when we came back to New York, Besser had seen Del in New York, and he said that Del said to him that he was impressed with the New York people. Because Secunda and I, we did this exercise.
Oh, so you got to perform. Oh, wow.
We did some different workshop-y things, but then the main thing was this thing we were doing was an exercise where one person does a monologue, straight up, regular long-form style monologue, a short one. And then player B does a monologue, but when player B's finishing his monologue, he turns to player A. So he goes from no fourth wall to yes fourth wall.
Oh, okay.
And then you engage in the scene. So it's a way of using monologue to transition into scene.
Oh, interesting.
Was the thing. So Scuns got to do his monologue. I got to do my monologue. And we were on fire.
Oh,
we were both on fire.
Nice.
I was very healthy at the time. And when you get healthy after you haven't been, you feel like a fucking superhero.
Yeah, it's like resistance training. Like all of a sudden, like the weights are off and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, and your brain is operating at a totally different level. Every time you get a kidney transplant, you get a new brain.
Wow.
Anyway, so we worked with Del. I think that's a symbolic ending of my improv training. And I was starting to teach.
Yeah, I think I'm an improviser now.
And, you know, I'd always coach. Everybody's ready to coach. Any decent player can coach. And any person who can get the job can usually teach.
Yeah.
And the important thing wasn't that I was leaping whole hog into teaching more at the time, which I was, because my classes were really taking off at the theater. You took my classes.
Yeah.
It was more about feeling like I've taken enough classes now.
Yeah.
But I just feel like I was kind of done with my training phase.
Man, that's so cool. You brought up teaching. You were known as like kind of like a stern taskmaster, I think, or something, which I don't really remember.
I don't know about stern, but taskmaster, yeah, why not? Why not hold people's feet to the flame of agreement?
Yeah.
You don't want people running around disagreeing with each other.
I think you were usually like a level 3 teacher or something. I mean, I don't think you were normally teaching
Once the school got big enough, I tended to float to the upper levels.
Yeah. When I finally got on a Herald team, which you were very supportive about because it took a couple times.
I knew you were a smart cookie, but you would hide it. You would hide your light under a bushel sometimes. Did young Will Becton feel himself holding back a little?
Well, I don't know. Like I definitely used, alcohol as a lubricant for performing, probably more so than I should have. Yeah.
Oh.
If it was like a class, no. But if I had a show, like I'd usually be like, at least like one of those big Heinekens from the store, like next to the theater.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
All those great classical English actors were all blasted while they're doing their Hamlet soliloquies.
Yeah, Burton and O'Toole.
Notoriously. It gave them lots of good panel.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Before we move on, who was on that team, that Herald team you were placed on?
Well, Helms was on that team.
The Never Not Funny Ed Helms. Dan Powell. What was the name of the team?
The Syndicate.
Syndicate. I was the Syndicate's director.
I mean, it was
We
good
had
group.
a blast.
Yeah.
Were you on it when I got you guys to fast for 24 hours?
That sucked.
I thought it would
That
be
was your
bonding.
idea?
Yeah, that was
I forgot.
I thought it was a great idea at the time. Everybody don't eat for 24 hours because you bond. But the reason why I think it hurt the show is because everybody brought food and it was in the green room.
Yeah.
And the green room, there was no door between the green room and the stage. It was just a little flimsy curtain. And the smell of all that fast food and all those hoagies had flown onto the stage. You guys are starving trying to do a Harold.
We just had a lethargic. I think at least half the scenes were about
beyond
food.
lethargic.
Yeah. It was. We limped through that. That's so funny.
I hope it was good for the team. It wasn't good for that particular show.
It was good for panel, and it was good for bonding.
That's what it was really for.
Probably more of a long-term exercise.
Yes, that was the super objective for you guys. Ali was doing shit like that all the time.
Yeah.
First class in Ali's class that people paid for, he sent them out to clean up the street. So they would take some pride in their area.
Yeah.
Of course, he went too far because he repainted the fire hydrants. They were color-coded.
Yeah.
The fire department wasn't happy.
Not legal. Yeah.
No, it's unlawful.
Yeah.
You guys were such good sports.
Well,
which is why I was doing all this dumb stuff.
Yeah.
I got you guys to paint a mural for your opening. You remember the mural opening?
Yeah, I love the mural.
That was a goofy idea. We liked it. Besser was not happy.
Oh, really?
What the fuck are you doing? Try the pattern game.
Oh, I didn't know that.
What are you doing?
That's funny. That makes sense that it was your idea. For some reason, I thought it was Dan Powell's idea.
Who else is on there? Molly Prather, Sarah J.
Yep. Eric Scott was on there, like a later iteration. John Reynolds, super funny guy.
Wow.
And then big, young, really nice guy, Scott Jennings. Like he was on there, like the first iteration.
Southern Boy Scott, also super smart.
Yeah.
Very funny.
Super smart. Yeah. I remember the moment, because I went to high school with Helms, oddly. He was a couple years older, but I remember we were in, it was either a practice group or just like outside class thing or whatever. But there was one thing where the scene was him kind of doing like a spacewalk. Picture Ed Helms doing a spacewalk, basically. I mean, but I was like, this guy's gonna be a fucking superstar. Like there was something about that one moment where he was just like so committed and so believable and also just like, charming or whatever. I was like, this guy's just a matter of time.
I know. I thought it was a matter of time too.
Yeah.
Usually you can't always see it coming.
No.
Because everybody's so good.
Yeah.
But Helms, like all his scenes were really funny. I'm like, what's going on with this guy? It's really, I don't have much notes for him.
You just can't throw him.
The Daily Show was a big launching pad at that time.
Yeah.
I remember when Cordry got on The Daily Show. And it was a big deal for us.
Yeah.
Like That was one of our big hires that was like our people.
Team win. Yeah. Helms called me when he was walking to the subway after getting the Daily Show. And he was like out of breath. I remember he got a mole removed as one of his. I
remember he did that as a story.
Yeah.
Finally, he got the words no one wants to hear. And you see, I think they showed the benign mole.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is improvising and kind of dedicating your life to improv, as opposed to a lot of people can treat improv as sort of like a means to an end. I mean, it happens in stand-up too, especially in that time where people were like, you do stand-up and you get a sitcom or whatever. And it's like,
it's just part of your acting thing. It's part of your repertoire, you know. There's plays, there's movie, there's internet now. Do your own, have a YouTube channel, radio, podcast. Get in there where you can get in there. Improv happens to be one of those practices that's good for you. Feels good, gets you out of the house. There's always a social component, usually a social component to it, either before or after. But more importantly, it's like a practice. It's like a yoga.
Yeah.
It's good for you as an actor, as an improviser, and even as a person, as a cat.
Yeah.
It makes you a more mellow cat.
Yeah.
It can. If you weren't mellow when you get in, it will help you mellow because and this is not just improv, this is theater. This is Dr. Grease paint. And so I think improv is like a theatrical yoga or whatever your workout routine is. You know, you do a little bit every day and then you got the big one you do on the weekend, you know, where you're really stretching and you're doing it in the presence of a lot of other people that you don't see all the time. Then you got the little things that you do every day. An athletic person rides the bike and does all the reps and all that at home. They do their forms of reps. We do our things, which is see lots of movies, try to see plays when you can, read lots of books, read lots of magazine articles. That's the mental floss for an improviser comedian type.
Yeah.
You know, we take a lot in, then you got to be putting that stuff out. If you write, you got to write a little bit every day.
Yeah.
Just like if you exercise, you can't do that shit on the weekends. If you're in athletics, you got to do that shit every day.
Yeah.
I think for comedy theater people, we do the little things every day, you know, and keeping your body in shape is really important if you're an actor, like an 8 shows a week kind of actor.
Yeah.
If you're, you know, a film actor and you're a certain type, you can sometimes get away with an unhealthy lifestyle. You do have to keep up certain things. So I like to think of it as kind of a practice. That's what having a Friday night slot for 20 years at a theater like UCB did for me. It keeps your chops up.
Yeah.
You know, so in the dry spells, it keeps you going. It keeps you vital.
Yeah. As somebody that did improv a lot for pretty short window.
That's when you're in an intensive training phase.
Yes. Yeah.
But then a lot of times you can find a place in your life where you can practice it if it's important.
There's also like almost like a chicken and egg thing with improvisers. And it's like, well, is your brain like this because your brain's like this and you found improv? Or is your brain like this because you found improv and it kind of rewired your brain and now you see all these patterns and you get pleasure out of making, you know, connections with these seemingly disparate ideas.
It is. It's a high state of play.
Yeah. So I think it's lived on in my brain, not as like a performer, but I mean, it definitely comes up in like writing. It definitely comes up in editing.
It depends what kind of animal you are in this business. Some of us are real performing animals.
Yeah.
Are you more the technical side or the performing?
I don't know. I mean, yeah.
And it also has to do where we've chosen.
Yeah.
Where we've chosen that we're going to try to make our livelihood.
Yeah.
You know?
I was not a SNL or bust person. When I started taking improv, it was just to meet like-minded people, basically. And I kind of fell more in love with it in of itself than I was anticipating. The deeper I got into it, the more I kind of like was like, shit, I'm going to actually try to do this for real. But that wasn't even the intention at the beginning.
When I came to New York in 91, there was absolutely no unity in improv. It was just separate groups.
Yeah.
I went and saw all the groups. I saw every group that I could in town just because I wanted to get the lay of the land, you know?
Yeah.
And I wasn't particularly compelled to train at any of them, except the one I went to, NIT, National Improv Theater, because they were teaching Harold. And it was all based on Del Close.
Yeah.
It was all Del.
Yeah.
And I'd heard that name around like Joel Murray and Second City people would tell. And then I met this woman in Florida, and she showed us her packet from NIT where you get walked through this Herald thing, and the Herald seemed amazing.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to learn the Herald.
I didn't know there were Heralds in New York pre-UCB, so that's interesting.
Small theater, and there also happened to be Scientologists.
I knew that part.
And I think that, and I didn't know anything about Scientology at the time.
Yeah.
But like, no wonder there were so few people.
Well, I mean, L. Ron Hubbard and Del Close are like,
Del and L. Ron were acquainted.
Yeah.
In fact, legend has it, look, print the truth or print the legend. Del gave L. Ron the idea to turn Scientology into a religion.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
They met during a bidding war. I heard that they were bidding on a Lovecraft book.
Okay. Wait, just a copy of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Like a first
because Del was always,
of the first edition
big
of
collector of books and cameras and different things. So they had just a small-time little bidding war on that, and they became acquainted. And apparently he told Del about his idea about Scientology, and Del said that you could make that into a religion.
Oh, my God.
Forrest Gump moment.
Yeah.
It's nice how Del's had this little historical touch on so many different people and things. SCTV was his idea, famously.
Oh, really?
Just the idea to have it be kind of all take place in like a little rinky-dink station.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a big meeting where they were going to try to figure out what to do for the TV show.
And he championed John Candy too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Farley, lots of people.
Yeah.
But when a John Candy walks through the door.
Yeah.
Although some people, I think, didn't see it.
It's like the Mississippi thing. It's like...
What's the Mississippi thing?
The Seinfeld, like, they found the Mississippi, like, oh, they would have found that anyway or whatever. Like, you shouldn't get too much credit for finding it.
I think so, too. I forgot about that particular bit.
So I have one question for you that's super specific. Is In the Light still your favorite Led Zeppelin song?
No, was it ever?
That's what you said.
Did I say In the Light? Was
yeah.
No, not In the Light.
Okay.
I might have said 10 Years Gone.
Okay.
That's so specific.
It is very specific.
But Physical Graffiti still, I guess Physical is still my favorite album.
Okay. Well, at least I got the album.
Yeah.
It is a double album, so that waters it down a little bit. But
no, you hit the target.
Okay.
That's a deep cut. Thank you.
Okay. You got it. And then at one point you said to me, and I think it was probably you maybe deflecting praise, because I was probably like, saw a Swarm show and was like, oh my God, you're like, whatever. And you said, improvisers are bottom feeders. Do you remember saying that? I don't think you meant it. I mean, I think you meant it like,
I'm certain I meant it
best.
But what did I mean?
Yeah.
So you came with something complimentary.
I think that's my theory, is because I don't think you think that.
Oh, was that my...
But you did
I
say
think
it.
At the time...
I'm more sure about this than In the Light.
You know what? When I was younger, I had sometimes you have a hard time accepting compliments.
Yes.
And it's a good thing because you often don't think you deserved the compliment.
Yeah.
And then when I thought I did do a good job and someone would compliment me, I'd still want to put on this fucking humility thing.
Yeah.
It must be an Irish Catholic thing. I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I eventually learned that even if you have a bad show and somebody says good show, you just say thank you.
Yeah.
And that's the end of it. But I think that was probably some attempt to be humble.
Okay.
Like,
that's what I thought.
We're mere bottom feeders.
Yeah.
Because Harold eats everything. We are the great recyclers. We're the algae eaters. We are the bottom feeders. No scrap goes by.
Yeah.
That's not useful to an improviser, or just the little detritus, of society, which is kind of what Seinfeld's about.
Yeah.
Is sweeping up the crumbs.
Yeah.
And looking in the dusty corners.
And then kind of elevating them. And
with improv, we get to look in the dusty corners of our subconscious.
Yeah.
Because we don't have time to sit and edit. All manner of things come out.
Yeah.
As long as you have the courage to do that. Because if you want it to just be wordplay and all those kind of games, it can be.
Yeah.
But if you want to really make it a sport, it's behind the eyes.
Yeah.
And the object work and all that frippery falls away. And it's people really laying it down.
Yeah.
And the laughter is just discovery. Laughter is a byproduct of good improvisation. That's just us all collectively making these discoveries together, uncovering this stuff.
I remember one of the best notes I remember getting, and I don't even think he was a teacher. I'm trying to remember the context of this. I mean, I think he probably taught, but I never took a class with him. John Ross Bowie at one point was like, look, if you're on stage and somebody says something and you don't know what it is, cop to that. Don't just try to act like you know what it is, because you'll discover what it is, and chances are, like, 75% of the audience is not going to know either. So they'll be happy you said it. And then there'll be camaraderie in the room because of that. And that was very freeing. Like, I think it had to do with somebody not knowing what the word sequester meant. And then the person tried to like kind of muddle, which could be funny if you're trying to like.
But we know when we do that in life, it always gets us in trouble.
Yes.
Like
that's what sitcoms are, basically.
You know Shelley Spade? Like, yeah. Like, okay, so Shelley, you know how Shelley is.
Oh,
you're like, that whole just gets deeper.
Yeah.
It's just like in life when you lie.
Yeah.
And that lie follows you.
Yeah.
It's a lie on the stage.
Yeah.
I heard Del in this interview with Studs Terkel say only a snob would laugh at something he didn't think was funny. Because it's a recognition of truth.
Yeah.
Bowie, I love when I give a note to someone and I forget I ever gave it, and then they repeat it back to me.
Yeah.
And we were having drinks years later after I directed Bowie's one-man show, Paid to Stand Around.
Oh, yeah.
About being in a band. He said, you gave me a note that was helpful. And I was like, oh, thank God. What was it? He asked something about how to relate to the audience in this telling of this one-man show. Because it was sort of the storytelling sort, not the character one-man show.
Oh, gotcha.
It was storytelling stuff. And I said, tell it as if you're telling it to a girl who's already in love with you.
Huh. Wow.
Because you don't have to win them. You've already won them.
Yes.
So now you can just tell it plain.
Gotcha.
It was a good show. Good one-man show.
Yeah. I
get to work on, I don't think I was the director, but Seth's one-man show, which was, dude, I'm so from California, you don't even know. I think in parentheses, you don't even know.
Man.
The Naked Babies. You know what people say about The Who?
Yeah.
They say about The Who that there's like got 4 lead guys.
Yeah.
You got a lead bassist, lead drummer.
Totally.
That was Naked Babies.
All those guys.
They didn't have the usual comedy group dynamic where one guy was the leader,
one straight
and one guy was always late. No, all professional, all funny, all had ideas.
Oh, man.
All didn't contradict each other.
Yeah.
Easy to work with. No fucking conflict. No fucking drama.
Yeah. Husky, Cordry, Seth, Bow. I mean, all those guys can bring it. There's just certain people you just know are going to bring it.
Tight, and all have super high comedy IQs.
Yeah.
They came up with this bit where they had this imaginary a cappella group called the Important Four, and they sang this medley. And Shock the Monkey was one of the songs. And they were going to do a thing where they show, the monkey.
I think I saw
that poster where you see monkey to man, finally the last phase, he's erect man.
Yeah, yeah.
Whoever came up with that idea, they fucking fell in place immediately. Everybody knows what to do.
I saw this.
It's a good show.
Man. When I finally got on a Herald team, I was living in Williamsburg. We'd had auditions. It was either my second or third go around. I can't remember. This was when it was the audition process, not just the, hey, you're on a team process. And I pressed play on my answering machine and I heard, hey, Will Beckton, Michael Delaney, you're on a Herald team. You might want to grab a pencil, tell you the rest of the team. and then you rattle off like Ed and everybody's name. And he goes, I look forward to seeing you at Herald Night for years to come. And I kept that. That was like, I never deleted that message. I don't know where the fucking tape is, but this is back when you actually had the little tape.
Mm-hmm. Right. That was good for people's one-man shows.
Yeah.
Like Daniel Johnston saved all his tapes.
Oh, yeah.
That is a nice moment. To be able to make the call.
I bet.
There's the flip side of that where you got to let people go.
Yes.
But anytime I had to cut somebody from a team, I always asked them one question. And that was, did you expect this call? And they all say yes.
Wow.
They knew that it wasn't working out for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Because I did make it a point to ask people that question.
There is an interesting, because I played a lot of sports in high school, and there was like this organizational, like Besser, like at one point, it was during a marathon, and I guess he had detected like sloppy play or jokey play or whatever it was.
Imagine people getting jokey at marathon.
Yeah. So, because people would literally be up all night and probably, drinking from a keg and sleeping on a floor or whatever. It was like a coach's halftime speech, but to all like active Herald team members. And basically just being like, this is bullshit. You guys are smarter than this.
It wasn't marathon. Was it marathon? I remember one of those happening.
Because I remember being super hungover, but that doesn't necessarily
I remember
mean
John
it's a marathon.
Gemberling writing a sketch about it.
Oh.
Because they're like, come on, people. Like, it was really like a let's get it together.
Then. Yeah.
He didn't want people just like hobos on stage. That was I remember that quote, that pull.
That was one of the quotes.
Oh, but you know what he said?
I'd love to do a Rashomon of this and just
maybe
talk
that was
to a
at
bunch of different people.
161. There was a different one at the later theater that made me embarrassed because he said, don't dress like a hobo. If you're the swarm, dress however you want. But the rest of you, don't dress like... And I was like, come on, that doesn't help. Singling out the favorite child does not help the favorite child.
Yeah.
It makes everybody want to pinch him.
Yeah.
But it was still nice to you. It was complimentary. But still, we weren't going to wear shorts. But we didn't wear shorts on stage.
Yeah, I don't think I ever wore shorts.
Ian wears shorts.
Yeah.
But he's Ian. If you're Ian, you can wear whatever you want.
Totally.
And Ian always wears swag t-shirt. Doesn't matter what it is. If you give him a swag shirt, he will wear it.
That's great. That's endearing. Thanks so much for doing this. And is there anything, I mean, the SCTV podcast, I mean, I really I listened to the Billy Merritt episode, and I'm looking forward to the Flaherty's, but like, do you consider yourself a comedy historian or just more specific to that show?
Maybe a de facto. I'm not a true historian.
Yeah.
But, it just, when I was young, I just spent all my time tracking down comedy. It started with Sesame Street, moved on Monty Python. That was a big crush.
I imagine probably Fawlty Towers.
Definitely Fawlty Towers was a appendix.
Yeah.
Just consider that in that Python world.
Yeah.
I was an absolutely devout Python fan.
Yeah.
And then discovered Saturday Night Live, got completely hooked on that, just totally enchanted with Aykroyd and Belushi. And then once I found SCTV, I was just that age.
Yeah.
And I'd already been primed with that Second City style of humor, with Belushi and those guys. So when I found SCTV, my mind was just completely blown.
Yeah.
And it managed to dominate my thinking for a number of years. And I dedicated myself to recording as many of those shows as I could. And the show was being re-released at the time.
Yeah.
And oddly, they aired it at 3:30 in the morning in my neighborhood. My VCR wasn't trustworthy. So I stayed up till 3:30 every night to manually tape the show.
Jesus.
It took a long time with all the hundreds of them. So with all the labeling and such.
Wow.
Then, of course, I would rewatch them. So that whole kind of Second City style thing, I really took a lot of care to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Because I was just hooked purely as a fanboy. Then, you grow up a little bit, move on to other things. I went to college for art and always wanted to be a visual artist. The comedy was just a side thing. Didn't want to do it at all. Didn't want to be a performer anywhere. I was a very introverted boy.
Yeah.
When I went to Palm Beach Community College for art, I wore all gray.
Okay.
Because I wanted to vanish. Literally the vanish. If you want to vanish, fucking Palm Beach Junior College is a good place to disappear.
Oh, man. I wish I had hidden camera footage of that.
Through a strange set of circumstance, I got sucked into a play, and then I met Billy Merritt, and that was the end of the story. So, now I do the SCTV podcast because I am an SCTV aficionado.
Yeah.
It's hard finding people who really know SCTV. Everybody was a fan and liked the show.
Yeah.
But it went off the air so long ago.
It was kind of like a mysterious thing for a lot of people, I feel like. I didn't know Ramus was an on-camera person until I listened to that episode. Yeah.
I didn't either for the longest time.
Yeah.
Till they came out in repeats.
Yeah.
And that's part of what was fun about it,
Yeah.
The pre-internet days where you had to really dig for things.
Yeah.
And you're going through years and phases of your life before you find stuff out.
If you want to see heavy metal parking lot or somebody that timed the Dark Side of the Moon and
right.
Oh, they got it on the second roar. This is perfect.
So am I a comedy historian? No, but do I love comedy history? Yes. And I remember lots of it too.
Yeah.
Gee, thanks for I like the clipboard. So it creates a mystery, Will.
Oh, good.
That you got the clipboard on. See, I tried to parry with my own pad and pen. It's not the same, though. I don't have anything written on it. This is a blank. I was going to take notes as we go, but it didn't seem to be necessary.
You're welcome to reverse engineer them.
Yeah. Can we trade?
Sure.
For just a moment?
Yeah.
Can I ask you one?
Sure.
So bounce back, upload to drop. Wait a minute.
That's the engineer checklist.
That was an Anchorman moment. So post, bounce back, mono. Talk about a snob just saying words. You've left some Stepfathers off this list of Stepfathers that you didn't read on the air.
Do you want to read it?
No, I'm just saying you didn't read off the Stepfathers, but if you had, you would know that you left some names off, and I'm offended.
Oh, really? Man.
I will name one name Stepfather, Zach Woods, who was our light man. for the sword. What the hell were we thinking, having him as a light man?
Oh, light man.
Yes, he was our lighting guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
One job. Pick the blackout?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now he'd play the
There's
music,
some pressure
too.
there to pick a swarm blackout line.
It's a tradition for all the best players to start as light people.
Yeah.
Joe Flaherty started as the lights guy at Second City. That's how he got the job.
That's cool.
He called up, asked for an acting job. And they're like, no, can you run lights? He'd grumble. All right.
That's awesome.
Because the guy running lights, we said, was whacked out on drugs.
Oh, yeah.
But he could act and he did workshops, and I think they just sucked him in. They wanted him in the cast.
You should always, that would be my main advice, is just do anything like that.
Hell
if
yeah.
asked, or volunteer, just do any of those type
All this
roles.
stuff about pay me. Yeah, you're going to get paid. But when you're young and energetic, volunteer.
Do the lights.
Good
do
to
the booth.
volunteer.
Yeah.
Doing UCB's lights are the best things I ever did. Now, I was a light person. I'd done lights professionally in Florida.
So you really knew how to flip the...
Yeah, no, I had a proper,
Oh,
I
you
had a
slide it.
manual too. But then when you get into comedy, sure, it's
Yeah,
easy.
yeah.
It's like a dining room light fixture. But timing is timing. You still got to get the timing right.
Totally.
And you got to do the light cue and hit the sound cue and the VCR at the same time.
There's a rubbing the belly, patting
Even
the
when it's
head.
lights up, lights down.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine like fucking up a blackout for a swarm show. That would be...
Oh, everybody fucks one up.
Yeah, you get one. So Pat McCartney, who was my level 1 teacher, he said that Stack's nickname was Lights, Brian Stack, because you could always count on him for the lights out line. And I was like, that's a badass.
In New York,
nickname.
everybody called him the 3-point shooter.
Oh, yeah.
Because anytime it was an ass cat and like, how are we going to get out of the scene? How are we going to get out of the scene? Stack would just fucking, the equivalent of just draining a 3-pointer when you needed one.
Yeah.
He was phenomenal.
Yeah.
All those guys were amazing.
Yeah.
But it's somehow in a pinch. You know how the best players rise?
Yes.
The way LeBron doesn't. The way the Michaels and the Larrys.
Yeah.
When it's finals time, they just get a little better. And when they're really on the spot, that's when they deliver.
Yeah.
That was always Brian Stack.
Totally.
Mm.
Awesome talking to you.
Oh, we've wrapped it up so many times
I know.
now. It's just going to keep going. Let's turn it into a marathon.
Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Michael Delaney. There's a term in improv called group mind, which basically refers to how in sync an improv team is. Swarm was very talented, but I think their high level of group mind is really what made them special. And I love that story about Ali Farnakian having his students repaint the fire hydrants. Ali was an ASCAT regular and a big presence at that theater before branching off and starting the Pit in New York. Be sure to check out the SCTV podcast with Michael Delaney. There are actually 2 episodes featuring Joe Flaherty. I'm really glad Delaney got a chance to talk to him. And I'm also looking forward to Delaney's book when that comes out. Life and Comedy is recorded at Jett Road Studios. Please rate and review and follow the show on Instagram and YouTube. You can also check out jetroadstudios.com if you want to sign up for the mailing list or need a place to record a podcast. Jett has 2 T's, like Joan. Thank you for listening.